You got home 12 minutes ago, the car is off, and your mind is still explaining your side to someone who is not even in the driveway. The dashboard is dark, your hand is still on the keys, and in your head, they are finally quiet enough to hear the whole speech. You know you should go inside, but part of you wants one more minute in the version where nobody cuts you off. That is the part people miss. The fake conversation is not just drama. It is your mind trying to create the response real life did not give you. In there, the other person pauses. They understand the exact sentence. They feel the weight of what they dismissed. Your mind is not always trying to win. Sometimes it is trying to be heard without having to beg. So if the scene is not random, what is your mind trying to get from it before real life can disappoint you? You open the message thread, stare at the blinking cursor, and type absolutely nothing. But in your head, the paragraph is perfect. Their apology comes in clean, and you answer like a person who has never once panicked over a read receipt. The phone stays quiet in your hand while your mind keeps testing a version of the conversation where nobody misunderstands you on purpose. That is the editable part. Real texting gives you delay, tone confusion, and the horrible little freedom of another person not responding the way you need. The fake version gives you cuts, retakes, and a room where the other person finally says the sentence that would let your body unclench. Imagination creates. Rehearsal prepares. Rumination reopens. Replacement begins when the fake exchange feels safer than sending the real one. Psychologists Matthew A. Killingsworth and Daniel T. Gilbert from Harvard University found in 2010 that in an experience sampling study of 2,250 adults, people's minds were wandering in 46.9% of the samples. So wandering is not rare. But this is more specific than drifting off while brushing your teeth. Your mind is trying to make the conversation emotionally fair before the real person can make it messy. And in Eli Summers' 2002 qualitative work at the University of Haifa, 6 adults with intense fantasy lives described their inner scenes as time-consuming, vivid, and useful for companionship, soothing, and escape. That is why the blank text box can feel less blank than the actual relationship. Your thumb hovers. Your throat tightens. Your boss sends quick question on Slack. And before you even click it, your mind has built a full HR deposition where you are calm, accurate, and somehow wearing better pants. The notification sits there unopened. Your stomach tightens before your hand even moves, and somehow, in 3 seconds, you have already defended your tone, your deadline, your character, and your entire professional existence. Then the scene changes. Your ex says one ordinary thing in a memory, and suddenly you are delivering the version of the breakup speech that makes them understand every sentence they avoided. Not the messy version. Not the one where your voice shook. The clean version, where they finally stop acting confused about what they did. Then your parent appears. In your head, they hear your childhood explanation and do not interrupt. They do not make it about their stress. They do not change the subject to how hard they had it. They just sit there, and for once, their face looks like the truth landed. That is the strange pull of fake scenarios. They let your mind write both sides of the conversation. Real people pause at the wrong time. They get defensive. They misunderstand the one sentence you needed them to hear clearly. But inside the scenario, the other person cooperates with the emotional ending you needed. The boss clarifies. The ex understands. The parent listens. That is not the same as imagination. Imagination creates something new. Emotional rehearsal tries to prepare you. Rumination keeps reopening the same wound. And when the inner scene starts feeling better than the life outside it, it can begin replacing the conversation you actually need. The fake scenario is a control room for conversations that never gave you a fair ending. So when the Slack notification stays unopened, it is not just procrastination. Your body is buying time. Your chest is waiting to find out whether this will be a question, a criticism, or another moment where you have to explain yourself too late. You are in the paper towel aisle at Target, one earbud pressed back in, pretending to compare prices while your mind is already somewhere softer. In the scene, someone texts first. They say they missed you without making it weird. They somehow know the exact way to check on you without making you feel needy. You put the cheaper pack in the cart, but part of you stays in the version where closeness shows up before you have to request it. This is not about winning an argument. It is not always about proving a point. Sometimes the fake scenario is where your want gets to exist without the embarrassment of being visible. Because in real life, asking can feel humiliating, especially in dating, where one extra sentence can feel like too much. Especially with family, where wanting more attention can make you feel childish. So your mind creates a person who chooses you first. Nobody can reject a need you never say out loud. That is why the scene feels warm, not dramatic, warm. You are not inventing a fake life because you are shallow. You built a private room because the outside room did not feel safe enough to hold what you needed. Your hand is still on the cart. You look at your phone, and the lock screen says 1:17 a.m., which is how you find out you have not been resting. You have been replaying one weird facial expression from earlier until your mind built a whole alternate version where they meant it, admitted it, regretted it, and finally explained themselves correctly. There are real messages you have not answered, a plan you quietly delayed, and that heavy after feeling where nothing actually happened, but your body feels like it just survived a conversation. This is where the line matters. Not because the scene felt intense, not because it was vivid, not because you could hear their voice so clearly that it almost felt embarrassing. The cost tells you what category you are in. Imagination creates. It gives you a new idea, a strange image, a story, a possibility. You come back with more space than you had before. Rehearsal prepares. It runs through what you might say, so the real moment feels less impossible. It can be useful before a hard call, a date, a family dinner, a meeting where your stomach already knows the room. Rumination reopens. It keeps dragging the same moment back under the light, looking for the exact second you lost control. You do not leave with a plan. You leave sore, and replacement is the expensive one. That is when the scenario does not just visit your life, it starts taking the chair where your life was supposed to sit. Sleep gets pushed back, messages stay unanswered, real conversations get postponed because the imaginary one already gave you a fake ending. Rest turns into a private trial. The problem is not that your inner world is strong. The problem begins when it starts spending hours that belong to something real. So at 1:17 a.m., the question is not, why am I like this? The sharper question is, what did this just replace? Because if it replaced a little silence, maybe it was your mind blowing off steam. If it replaced sleep, a reply, a decision, or the courage to ask someone directly, then the fake scene has started charging rent. You are folding laundry, and halfway through the same shirt twice, your mind is explaining your childhood to a parent who finally does not interrupt. In the fake version, they do not minimize it. They do not make it about them. Somehow, they give you the apology you stopped expecting years ago. Then you come back to the room. The shirt is still in your hands. And there is that small, embarrassed feeling that you disappeared into something that was not really happening. That embarrassment is sharp, not loud, just sharp enough to make your face feel warm, even though nobody saw you do it. You smooth the shirt like that will prove you were present the whole time. But now the real room feels colder than the imagined one. And here is where the loop gets cruel. The scenario gave you relief. Then, noticing you needed it makes you feel ashamed. And because that shame is harder to sit with than the original ache, your mind slips right back into the version where someone finally understands. That is the part people judge too quickly. This may have started as protection. Maybe real conversations taught you that honesty got interrupted, punished, mocked, or turned into someone else's injury. So your mind built a place where the sentence could finally finish. That does not make you broken. It makes the habit make sense. But protection starts charging rent. Not all at once. It starts with the shirt still unfolded. Then the tightness in your chest. Then the weird little grief of realizing the person in your head was kinder than the person you actually had. So the question is not, why do I keep doing this? The better questions are quieter. What did it soothe? What did it cost? What did it keep me from touching? And if your mind had to build that protected place inside you, the final question is not whether you are broken. It is why the outer room never felt safe enough to hold what you needed. You come back from the scenario and your thumb wakes the screen like the real world just interrupted you. For a second, the room feels flatter than the conversation you were just having in your head. Nothing actually happened, but your body has that quiet after feeling, like you visited somewhere that knew exactly what to say. The screen is too bright, the room is too still, and there is a small part of you that misses the place you just left. That is the part worth treating with care. Not because the scenario was real, because the need inside it was. Your inner room may have been the first place where nobody rolled their eyes, changed the subject, called you sensitive, or made you earn the right to speak. So of course it felt easier to go there. Of course it felt safer than trying to make the outer room understand. But the most painful thing is not that you imagine too much. It is that some part of you learned to feel fully only where no one could interrupt. You are not making up a fake life. You are trying to touch the version of life where your feelings do not have to fight for a chair. And when your thumb wakes the screen again, the room is still here. The light is still flat. But now there is a name for what just happened. You were not being childish. You were practicing being received. If this names something you do but rarely say out loud, comment rehearsing.